Dr. Slattery, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
How have you been?
Can't complain, just working, having fun, enjoying life.
Nice.
Nice. Well, it's really good to see you. There's a lot for us to kind of give you an update on what we've been building at Furrensics, and I know we've been talking for the past 2 years, but I think maybe a good way to start is maybe we can start off with some introductions so that people can get to know you. We can give a little background to ourselves as well. But yeah, let's kick it off that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's probably the most pertinent to this discussion is I've been a practicing veterinarian in some degree of ownership capacity for nearly 2 decades, which is very exhausting to even say out loud. But as a result, I've seen a lot of animals come and go, and I've seen a lot of families greatly appreciate some of the new technologies that have come into the space. And I'm happy to be a part of something like this. I'm happy to try to share some of my experiences with you guys.
Yeah,
and maybe we're happy to have you. That's for sure.
How about you start off by telling us how you got into or decided to be a veterinarian?
Oh man. It's I get asked that question all the time. I think that everybody kind of has this all creatures great and small kind of James Herriot, kind of story. And I didn't really, I think sciences and maths kind of came a little bit more naturally to me. I was interested in them. And then so I started flocking to medicine. And then what drove me into animal medicine as opposed to human medicine was, I think, just the love of animals, right? There was just something incredibly unique about petting your dog or petting your cat. I loved it. I loved everything about it. And then I continued to, I guess, fool my professors well enough to keep advancing me in my courses. And then next thing you know, I'm, sitting down to take, entrance exams and go to veterinary school and whatnot. So I enjoyed it. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I went to Auburn University, and then I actually went to the University of Tennessee, College of Veterinary Medicine, and enjoyed both of those places. Maybe some of them a little bit too much, but I think all of it, ultimately led me to where I was. I moved back to Memphis and started raising a family. And what a lot of people don't know about me that have known me as a vet is that I was really close to going into large animal medicine. I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't grow up with really any large animal experience other than kind of being in awe of horses. But it wasn't horses that got me. When I was in my training, it was the cows. It was, working dairy farms and going and doing some of those ambulatory services. It was just so interesting to me. But, I guess the desire to live in a little bit more of a populated area and raise a family near some family members got me into the city. And now I do, what I think most of us would consider to be a high volume general practice, very much a general practice veterinary operation here in Memphis.
And I mean, that's a big jump going from deciding to go from large animals to small animals now. You talked about, opening up your practice. What does that look like? How many pet owners are coming in through your doors? What's the breakout that you see between dogs and cats? Are there any other, types of animals that you see coming in, like snakes or gerbils or anything?
Yes. So we've recently, within the past couple of years, added an associate, a colleague, I should say, that does a lot more in what we kind of largely consider the exotics space, which is anything from small mammals to reptiles. Some birds, not as many, and I think a lot of that is just because there are some really great, almost bird-only veterinarians that many of those pet owners go to. but largely dogs and cats for us, and really significantly more dogs than cats. I know I should know this, but there's 9 veterinarians in my practice, and I think on a clinic whole, we probably see 70% dogs, 25 to 30% cats, I think is probably generous. And, that's always been very interesting to me because I really think the pet owning population is way different than that. And again, I'm speaking about statistics that I don't know the exact answers to, or I don't know the answers to those questions, but I would venture to guess that there are a lot more cat owning households out there than I see as a veterinarian.
And that's crazy because you're not the first vet that we've spoken to that's brought that up, right? And what's even crazier to see is the increase in the amount of cat owners out there in the US today. And it doesn't make sense, and that's something that we can talk about later on, but it didn't make sense to us that when we spoke to vets, the number of visits is significantly more on the cats, on the dog side than it is on the cats. What's your take on all this? What do you see? What do you think the reasons are? Is it because cats just don't get sick, or is it that they're hiding their pain and their illness? How do you see it?
I think the last 2 things that you said are very much support my thought there, is that, cats oftentimes don't show their pain. They don't show their sickness. They oftentimes don't show their disease at all. And I think the other huge piece of it is just the stress that bringing a cat to the clinic puts on not just the cat, but the cat owners. And, I think there's something to be said for a great variety of, I shouldn't say great variety, indoor cats. Oftentimes, I believe cat owners think if they're eating well, drinking well, then everything is okay. They're not exposed to the elements. They're not exposed to the infectious diseases. They're much less likely to be exposed to injury. And so it's my assumption that many of those cat owners might think that cat does not need to go to the vet. And I'm not at all advocating that you should, no questions asked, stress the cat out and make them come in. But I am advocating that there's times that they need to be seen that we're overlooking. I think, if you're comparing cats and dogs and cat and dog owners, although there's a lot of overlap there's many dogs that, contrary to popular belief, they actually don't mind coming to the vet. They're happy. They get to see people. They get petted. They get treats. It can be an enjoyable experience. I think we all have been a part of or witnessed the dogs that don't feel that way, but it's oftentimes not nearly as much of a process. But look, I'm regurgitating data that's given to me or that I read from trusted sources when I hear the statistic of there being way more cat owners than I am able to see as a veterinarian. What I mean by that is, the data's out there, right? We know who's buying cat food. We know who's buying litter boxes. We know who's shopping for cats. And then when the information or the data is, extrapolated into how many cat visits there are to a veterinary facility or in a particular area, it's significantly less. So maybe they just don't like guys like me, so they don't want to bring them to the vet. I don't blame them.
No, they definitely like you. Well, I think it's a good segue here to kind of move into what we're building here at Furrensics. And we've had the opportunity to tell you a little bit about it. You've helped us significantly over the past year or two in thinking about how this can be useful for cat owners out there, and what it is, that is worth going after. And so let me at least start off by kind of giving a little background to myself and how I came across Furrensics, and I'll pass it over to Dr. Amit Banerjee, who can talk a little bit more about this too, and from his side, the technological side, which I think is the most important about this. So, I've been in the healthcare space the past 7, 8 years of my life, and my life was focused on human health side. And what started off working for a company that was using imaging and sound waves to perform surgery, that transitioned into, from an investing side, looking at private healthcare companies in the space. And I spent 2 years looking at what made companies unique and successful. And it was along that journey that I met one of our other co-founders, who's a serial entrepreneur, Anil Sethi. He sold multiple companies. One of his companies was sold to Apple, where he became director of Apple Health for quite some time. But he is the guru when it comes to digital health. And he introduced me to what Amit was working on out at Johns Hopkins University, and I was completely blown away. And I'll let Amit talk about this, but the fact of by using light and not chemistry to detect biomarkers, I think that was game changer. And I think that's the kind of technology we wanted to bring to the pet space, and give pet owners the ability to really take a look at what's going on in an affordable way. And so, Amit, I want to pass it over to you to kind of give your background, because I think it is important for people to understand that this isn't just AI. This is actual lab grade technology that has been studied for many, many years. And there's real science, and there's journals about detecting biomarkers using this approach. And we have the patents, and we developed them. And we have 3, and we're getting our 4th. But we've been going through the work to really to put ourselves on the map. So Amit, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Maurice. At Hopkins, I was there for, you mentioned decades, Dr. Slattery. I was at Hopkins for a couple of decades. And so my background's in computer vision, AI, and remote sensing. So one of the things I'm really proud of is my work in hyperspectral imaging. All right. So what is hyperspectral imaging, right? So if you've never heard of the term, the way I like to explain it is, think of high definition TVs, right? High definition images, right? When we were back in the day when we watched standard definition TVs, you can see most things, right? But then when you see in high def, there's so much more detail that you can see, right? It gives you so much more information. And you can see, for example, watching a hockey game, you can see like the creases in the ice, right? When they're skating on HDTV. So hyperspectral is kind of the same thing when you compare it to color image. Right, so our eyes, your digital cameras, they see combinations of red, green, and blue. Right, you've heard RGB. You mix them together, you get all the colors that you see. Right, but what hyperspectral does, hyperspectral imaging gives you much higher resolution in the color domain. All right, and so what that allows you to do is extract finer differences between the colors or the spectra of objects that our eyes can't see. Right, so for example, Dr. Slattery, you're wearing a white lab coat, right? So somebody else could be wearing a white lab coat, and to us it looks the same, right? It's white, right? But with a hyperspectral camera, it can tease out differences because maybe you wash yours with Clorox and somebody else washes it with Tide, or maybe it was made with a different material, right? So even though it looks white to us, this hyperspectral camera can pick it out, right? So I did a lot of work with APL, working for the DoD, and one of the really interesting things we showed is that you could put one of these cameras up in the air on an airplane 24,000 feet in the sky, look down at a car, and you can tell the year, make, and model of that car, right, from that distance, just by looking at the spectra of that vehicle's paint. So anyways, fast forward to about 6-7 years ago, I started working with folks at the Hopkins Hospital, and you're wondering, how can we leverage this amazing technology for healthcare applications? So we actually had a really interesting experience where we put this camera on top of in the ER over an operating table. And so we saw somebody getting a prostate prostate surgery, and we were watching it, recording it, and we could tell blood flowing and the different types of tissue right away with this camera. So then we started, exploring, what are some other uses, and we were talking. Finally met up with Dr. Jay Pasricha, who's a world famous gastroenterologist, who's also a co-founder with us. And so he asked me the question: well, hey, what if we took this camera and put it above a toilet bowl, looking at someone's stool? What can you tell? What kind of diagnostics can you do? So that sounded really interesting to me, kind of disgusting, but interesting. So then we put this camera on top, and then what we realized was, blood, okay, in particular hemoglobin, has a very unique spectral signature. Okay, so what we're doing is we're looking at how the hemoglobin protein how it absorbs and reflects different wavelengths of light. Okay. To our eyes, we can never see that. Or it just looks red, basically, right? But with the hyperspectral camera, it can detect it. And because the spectrum is so unique, even if there's just trace amounts, you can still pick it up. Right? And so there's a, wow, that's pretty amazing, right? So, because we're kind of all at the age of using Cologuard, right? Right, where you have to go, do that whole messy business, go to the bathroom, package it up, ship it off, and you wait a couple weeks, and basically what they're telling you is, hey, is there blood in your stool, right? Well, now with this camera, I can just take a picture, a hyperspectral picture, and to tell you within seconds if there's blood in your stool, right? So to us, that was a game-changing technology. And so then we worked with the Hopkins Hospital looking at human stool samples, animal stool samples, rodent stool samples, where we injected different amounts of blood, and we had in vivo blood with the human stool samples. And we found our technology had high correlation with the standard benchmark chemistry-based tests for detecting blood in stool. And so with that, then we said, you know what, we think we have a product here. And so that's when we started Furrensics. And we've really been focusing on the pet markets. And so Dr. Slattery, that's why we came to you about a year ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about what we're developing is when we saw the market, especially in the cat space, and we saw that there's over 45 million households with a cat, and all those households have a litter box. We saw that as an opportunity to turn their litter into our lab. And I think that is a revolutionary thing to think about, because no one's looking at someone's crystals or someone's clay or just where a cat's going to the bathroom, right? And being able to track behavior and look for actual changes in the urine or in the stool, right? That's the kind of data that we wanted to start to build out. And you look at the market today and you see that there's all these smart litter boxes out there. And there's like 20 of these companies, right? And they're from all over and they all cost the same, right? They're somewhere between $600 to $800. They look the same, right? And they're made of the same components. And so the idea behind Furrensics was really, can we develop a piece of hardware that was affordable and it can attach to any litter box? If I were to take a guess, I would assume that out of those 40 plus million households, 3% to 5% have a smart litter box. Well, what about all the dumb ones? The ones that cost $20, right? That's the kind of market that we want to go after. And where we want to focus on is pick cat owners that really care about their health. And so, Dr. Slattery, I know this is something that we've talked a lot about in the past, but one thing that we continue to talk about and would love to kind of get your thoughts and maybe shed some light on it is, what's useful data to you as a vet, right? What are the types of things that you would like to see in a product that can detect or catch some of these things early?
Yeah. So I don't mean to get tongue tied there, but it really, the answer, in my opinion, can be really complex, but it could also be really simple. I would like to know as much information as I can while a cat, does not have to come to the veterinary facility and is not being encouraged to do something that they wouldn't naturally do. Okay. The reason that matters is that cats are very particular. Every cat owner knows this. Anybody that's ever worked with cats knows this. So if we're going to use a different type of litter to help us detect something that might be going on, even if the vet just says, hey, I want you to collect a urine sample for me. Maybe we weren't able to get it in the vet facility or in the clinic. I want you to go home with this special type of litter. It doesn't absorb the urine. Well, now you've changed the quote unquote ecosystem of that cat. They might not use that litter the same way. So we might not ever even get a stress-free urine sample. Okay. So I want it to give me as much information as I could get from a thorough diagnostic that went out to the lab, but I want to get it without them having to be stressed out and potentially without them having to come see me. Okay. If I'm answering the question more in more generalities, what information do I want about a cat? I want what blood work can show me, right? I want what a urinalysis can show me. So if something that they can get at home can start to give me that information, potentially, concentration status of the urine. Is there blood in the urine? Are there crystals in the urine? Is there blood in the poop? Is the poop formed? Is it dry? Is it solid? How many times did we go during the day? How many times did we try to go and nothing happened? I feel like that is all incredibly valuable information that I really, with even the greatest pet owners that watch their cats like a hawk, they don't have that information. They just don't, because nobody is sitting there watching the litter box 24 hours a day. And if they are, the cat's not using it the way that they're supposed to, because they're creeped out. They're wondering, why is Steve in here watching me go to the bathroom? Cats, I really believe, are that peculiar and particular about their litter box habits oftentimes.
If you were to think about, with cats, some of the top reasons they're coming in to see you, if they even do,
right?
What are they? Like, are you? Is it UTIs? Is it something else?
Yes, it's obviously there are a lot of the pet owners that we see that bring their cats are still bringing them for preventative maintenance. Okay, so I want to be fair to the question, and that I do think a big chunk of the cats that we see are for wellness visits, whatever that might mean. Okay, now along with that visit, with appropriate questioning, we end up learning that they probably came in because of something that, unless they were just following their reminders to a T, we're learning that something was going on that they were curious about. And that was maybe how they're going to the bathroom, how frequently they're going to the litter box, how frequently they're going to the litter box. Definitely inappropriate urination, and then abnormal bowel movements, in particular diarrhea. Cat diarrhea is no fun. Most people know when their cat has diarrhea. They just oftentimes might not know how frequently it's happening if it's a cat that's pretty fastidious and going to the litter box when they do go.
So you're saying understanding the amount of times that a cat has diarrhea is beneficial?
Absolutely. I think it's beneficial. Just thinking about bowel movements, is it loose when they go, or is it increased volume, increased frequency, and then what's the consistency of the bowel contents, right? Like, I think all of that gives us a different, I think all of that helps us work towards a diagnosis a little bit more quickly. And then I know this is something that you, Amit, and myself have discussed, is how they get in and out of the litter box even is very, very helpful. I mean, that's been, I know that you shake your head because we've talked about this. This is a to me, kind of like the really, talking about litter boxes, saying icing on the cake is a little bit weird, but how they get into and out of the litter box, or how frequently they're going in and out of the litter box, can actually be a very helpful tool in learning about their locomotion. And do they have arthritis? Are they developing some frustrations with how they get up and down? Let me turn this.
Okay, I got a question for you though. Is there like a story you have, or what's the most surprising thing that a cat's litter box has ever told you about their health?
Oh man. I honestly think that I know that I'm dodging the question, but I think what the litter did not tell us is what's told us is what's been the most surprising to me is, an owner coming in and not recognizing that they weren't cleaning the litter as much, or that it wasn't clumping up as much. And so it's almost the lack of information that ended up being, oh my gosh, this cat might have early signs of, basically sterile cystitis or feline lower urinary tract disease. And if it's a male cat, we're talking about the possibility of going to surgery versus not going to surgery. It absolutely blows, in my opinion, it blows cat owners' minds when we tell them that your cat might be here for what you think is a urinary tract infection, and it is caused by stress. And it is not an infection. It is simply stress.
That's a great point. How often are you seeing cat owners come in, whether it's a wellness visit or for them thinking, they're in there for a UTI to treat that, but it end up being that that's not the case, and it's something they had no idea about. Do you see that? Does that happen often?
It happens often. It happens pretty often. Okay. I mean, we live in a world now, or I guess maybe we always have, but there's a lot more indoor only cats. There's a lot of multi-cat households. Okay. Anybody that's ever lived with somebody else or has had siblings recognizes that you don't always get along. So cats develop litter box. It kind of reminds me, I'll explain this to pet owners sometimes. And it reminds, it's the teenage girl banging on the door for her brother to get out of the bathroom because she's got to go in and she's got to get ready, and then only to open the door and he just destroyed the bathroom, and now she's got to go in there and get ready for school. Cats have their own, some of them don't want to go, they don't want to urinate where they defecate. They don't, and then they might develop litter box aggression that the owners cannot see. And so I feel like whenever there's any appropriate, or not necessarily diarrhea, but inappropriate urination in particular, but then also maybe even sometimes some abnormal bowel movement kind of episodes, a lot of it can be linked back. Way more urine than the bowel movements can be linked back to some sort of stressor in the house. Maybe there's something going on outside. Maybe there's something going on with a dog in the house. I mean, a lot of people might have a cat or two and maybe a dog or two. Dogs and cats don't always get along, even when they do get along. So there's a lot of stressors that go on that can straight up cause, cystitis or feline lower urinary tract disease, that to even veterinarians oftentimes for a really long time, the answer to that patient that came in with inappropriate urination or frequent urination was, some sort of anti-inflammatory and an antibiotic. That was it. And now we're in a world where we realize we might have to put them on some sort of anxiety reducer or, more benign medications or treatment plans and behavioral modification systems to help really fix that disease.
Interesting. Dr. Slattery, one of the things we've been really excited about at Furrensics is that we're able to now detect blood in urine, even when the urine's mixed in the litter. A couple questions for you. Like if you find a cat, and you did a urinalysis and you saw blood in there, what does that tell you? And then do you think also trends are important? Seeing, is the amount of blood or amount of urine increasing or decreasing over time? What kind of information does that tell you?
It gives me a lot of information. First off, I think I'm answering this question for just me, but it helps me determine the severity of the situation. Okay. There is not a single time where blood in the urine of a cat is a good thing, right? I would even go as far as to say it's never normal, right? Even post-surgical, you might see it, but you would prefer not to. Okay, so if there is any blood in the urine of a cat, in particular a male cat, to me it is severe, because a urethral obstruction is a very difficult, complicated, challenging, expensive, even potentially terminal situation. And so the earlier we catch that, the better. I mean, I don't want to paint an unfair picture of positivity here, but I really believe this. In many cases, if we knew that they had blood in their urine early enough, and let's just assume that that patient, that pet owner, was not going to take that information and then immediately package up their animal and get them to a vet clinic. Okay, obviously, as a veterinarian, that's what I would love for them to do, because there's diagnostics that I could perform, in particular urinalysis, physical exam, urinalysis, blood work, what have you. But let's say we weren't going to do any of that. I really wonder, in that case, if we got the right history, if treating the cat for the stress that it might be under, having a fair conversation with the cat owner of what could be going on that's causing that stress, and even maybe getting them on some sort of anxiolytic, whether it be a natural supplement or an actual pharmaceutical, to calm them down. Is that all it took for that patient to start using the litter box more normally, not have as much of an inflamed, irritated bladder wall that is ultimately could contribute to the urethral plug or blockage that could happen? So I don't know. I mean, I really think that it would be really hard for somebody to argue against that, if you ask me. There's plenty of people, some of whom that taught me, that might be able to argue that, and I'd listen to them because they're so smart. But I think that things like that I believe that in particular is incredibly valuable.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, sorry to get too passionate about it, but the bowel movement to me is more of a trend, right? It's kind of like, okay, is every other bowel movement a loose one, or is this every time? Is there blood in it? The blood in the stool of a cat, again, never normal, but depending on what they eat, might not be as alarming as maybe seeing blood in a human stool specimen. But the trend, in my opinion, very, very helpful. And to that matter, even back to the urine, the trend is helpful, because if somebody was able to say, hey, this is pretty interesting, my cat usually goes to the litter box 3 times a day, 4 times a day, and I just noticed that it didn't show me anything abnormal, but he went to the litter box and had a quarter-sized amount of urine 4 times in 2 hours, then I would say, all right, we got to focus on this. So I think, yes, all of the above.
Interesting. That's helpful. Thank you.
We've told you a lot about what we're building, and we've spent some time discussing, what the future of this looks like. But what gets you excited about what we're building at Furrensics and this device specifically for the cat's litter box?
Great question, Maurice. I think the potential. I really do believe that you're building potential to genuinely increase the quality of life and increase the quality and longevity of the human-animal bond, which is really ultimately what a lot of veterinarians are after. I know you didn't ask the question, but that's kind of what I'm after. I love people. I obviously love pets. But I seeing the bond that is created between the pet and the parent, the owner, is very important. And seeing that damaged by sickness and illness that could potentially be at least caught early, maybe avoided, I think that's what you're building. I think the possibility of identifying and early detection of disease processes and sicknesses is what gets me the most excited. What the high spectral imaging can do that I don't quite understand is also what excites me, because I think that what we're talking about is possibly the tip of the iceberg. Again, I don't want to be overly optimistic, but seeing what it can do already with those, for lack of a better word, tissue specimens or organic matter makes me think that, what's next? What could forensics uncover?
That's a great question. This is something we've been exploring as well.
Sure.
So we've been looking at stool. What other things can you see in stool? Like bilirubin, right? That has a known spectral signature. You can pick up on that. Mucus, those kinds of things. Looking at ears. We've talked with you a year ago about looking at dog ears, right? Can we detect inflammation, wax? And then start maybe even diagnosing, like, is there an ear infection or not? Or at least what is the risk of an ear infection? We've thought about skin, right? Looking for lesions or rashes on dogs and cats. Teeth, dental is another important area where, like, for example, we did some exploration and we found plaque has a unique spectral signature, right? So you can take our scanner, image it, and then identify where on the teeth the plaque exists. So those are kinds of things that we have in our mind and that we think is the future forensics.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I know. I can easily get lost in the weeds on all of that because it's all so exciting. It really is. And some of it, I'm just being fair to the reality, right? Ear infections can be brutally painful. Skin infections can be brutally painful. I don't at all mean that they can't be so bad that, well, anyhow, I'll erase that thought for a second. They can be brutally painful, okay? But the urine in a cat is really, I really mean it when I say it is really potentially a lifesaver. From detection of kidney disease to, preventing the possibility of urinary tract damage and ultimately urinary tract obstruction is an actual life-saving possibility. And at an even way more basic level, it just decreases discomfort for our pets. I mean, there's not a single, well, there should not be, I hope I don't know any single pet owner that would prefer for their pet to experience more discomfort than they have to, right? That's not why we have them. We live amongst people that might feel that way about other humans, but they don't want to feel that way about their pets. We want to avoid any and all suffering because we realize they don't have a voice. And that's something that forensics is trying to provide in the comfort of their own home. That's the part about this that is so special. There are some really awesome diagnostic tools and diagnostic tests that are available to us these days, and I'm always impressed. But with cat urine in particular, the only way to really trust it oftentimes is to get a sample in a way that is difficult, stressful, potentially risky, and also really expensive. Maurice, I want to jump back to one of the things that you said about putting the hardware on a low-cost litter box. And man, that's an exciting thought as well. And the reason is, like you said, there are people that have multiple cats that maybe have decided that they cannot or should not or can't afford, but for whatever reason don't have one of the smart litter boxes, but they do have multiple cats. They might even live in a smaller space, And so this information for them and for those cats could be even more helpful. And that's exciting. That's another piece of this that I would say is very exciting.
You know, we were talking to a vet the other day, and she was saying how she has 3 cats. She loves her smart litter box, but her cats, 2 of the cats, don't like going into the smart litter box. So she's like, I'm not going to buy 3 different smart litter boxes. They're massive. They take a lot of space. You know, they're expensive.
Yep.
Right. And so, but she loves it. And I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. They're great products out there, and they're really good at what they do. You know, but not everyone can afford that price point, and it's tough.
No, it is tough. And I realize, that kind of opens a Pandora's box of questions of, well, then you shouldn't have that many cats in that. And I just don't buy that. It's like, come on, man. Like, if somebody has, 3 cats and they live in a studio apartment and they're happy where they are, I still think that being able to give them the opportunity to have more data at a price point that doesn't require them to put a giant, smart litter box, not giant, I agree with you. Some of them are pretty impressive. But, having to go break the bank for a new one, I think it's a great idea.
It is. Well, you have to tell, I mean, is there any stories that come to your mind, some crazy stories that you can share with us about pet owners or cat owners that have come through your clinic? Whether it's about them thinking they had something that wasn't, something that came up.
Oh, yes, for sure. Honestly, one of the things that would be really, really interesting to me about this technology, I'll get back to the question, is, when there's kind of an argument amongst the vet and the owner on whether the cat has been eating something that it's not supposed to eat. You know what I mean? Like, does your cat eat plants or anything like that? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm excited. Maybe Furrensics could tell me whether the little pieces of plant material that have come through.
Well, it's in our name, so we should be able to
yes,
to
that's
find
right.
it.
So with cat owners, I think that what surprises me about cat owners is it doesn't surprise me about cat owners, but there are little things that will be going on with cats that can create a massive disturbance in their life, right? Like, and sometimes cats, if somebody has a cat that doesn't really like to be handled that much, even at home, they'll come in and cat's not eating well, cat's not using the litter box like they used to. And then they come in and we learn that it's an overgrown nail, but that nail has curved and gone in so far that it is almost osteomyelitis. Now, usually that cat would be limping, right? But there's cats that are just hunkered down. They want to lay low. They're not going to show anybody that they're hurting. And so I'm always surprised by that. Even with really great, loving, pet owners or cat owners in this case, there could be something that quote unquote simple that's it's causing systemic illness, and it's something as simple as, a nail. I think the story about a cat that I'm always reminded of is this would have been a great situation to have had Furrensics and that camera technology. I have the cat in the exam room up on the exam table, and it's a kind of a peninsula style exam table that's coming out of the center of the wall, right? Cat's up on the center, technician is holding the front of the cat, kind of propping up the back end, and I'm doing a thorough exam, and I can tell that the back end is a little bit soiled, and so I'm going to take a better look. And I raise up the cat's tail and get down there close, and this cat explodes
No.
diarrhea.
Ouch.
I mean, I'm telling you, like, it was so awful that we pulled the security footage
No,
of
you
me
didn't.
getting, it looked like I got sniped and fell back into the wall. And I think about that, and I mean, even to try to segue that into this conversation, I mean, just knowing what was happening in that cat's litter box would have been very helpful.
It would have prevented that explosion.
It would have prevented from me
agree.
from getting an explosion in the face. No, but honestly, cats are so mischievous sometimes. Cats oftentimes also something that would be really interesting, and cats do spend time in their litter box. So what else is on their litter that we may not know? Well, saliva might be something that would be detected. Cats are notorious for having dental problems that we might catch a little bit late. Most people aren't opening their cat's mouth and looking in their mouth. These are very helpful things. I've seen, I'm always blown away by that. Similarly, cats like to play with strings. Every veterinarian has had a case where you don't know what's going on. The cat's vomiting. We can't figure out why. You do an exam, you open up their mouth, open their tongue, and they've got a string wrapped around their tongue that's going down into their stomach and is a life-threatening string. So those are some of the things that come to mind.
Awesome. Great story. Well,
I feel terrible. Surely I've got a better story than that.
that's a great story.
That's very, very entertaining. Yeah.
Probably the greatest story is when you learn that a cat got to the vet clinic that should not have got to the vet clinic. It is like that little 8, 10, 12-pound creature will turn the whole clinic upside down. If a cat gets out of their restraint, I mean, you're talking about they'll get up in the ceiling. I mean, it is absolute pandemonium.
They'll bite you.
They'll not just bite you. They will, I mean, it's scary. So I literally think about it sometimes, and I think y'all know how I feel about this overall. It's like, if I could help make decisions to prevent your cat from coming to the vet,
I'm in.
this is a win-win, baby.
Hey, good thing we're still recording.
I love it. All good. No, I mean, I really do. I'm impressed, guys. Amit, I know that you went into the possibilities, and there's so much to unpack there. Obviously, a little bit different, but the teeth thing is enormous. I mean, people really, I believe pet owners they're split between veterinarians or crooks and charging $1,000 to get dogs' teeth cleaned. And then some of them really believe that it prevents long-term disease. I mean, if there was a way to prove that there is plaque, biofilm, calculus on the teeth, then just go Google it, right? Like, go get in your Chat GPT or Claude or whatever and say, hey, my cat has calculus, or my dog has calculus on its teeth.
Right.
I mean, that to me is that might be as exciting as the hotspot management or ear management,
Yeah. All right. Good to know. It's good to know. All right. Great.
Awesome. Hey, one last question. What about parasites in cats?
So I was afraid you were going to ask me about that. I know we're still recording. Here's the deal. We just don't see a ton of parasites in cats because so many of them are indoor.
Yeah.
A great variety of cat owners that bring in cats that go outside, they never see them poop. And even if they have diarrhea, they'll just leave them outside. And that's way more common where I live because, there's still plenty of low-income people that have pets, and there's plenty of people that live, like you could be, almost impoverished and potentially have a cat that has a yard. Whereas in more apartment living, high-rise living, you would know right away, right? Like the cat's got diarrhea. You don't have the option to just put it outside.
Yeah.
But we still see it. The cats that go outside, that come inside, then they get diarrhea, they get giardia, they still get roundworms. We see those in kittens all the times, or not all the time, but regularly. Another cool thing about cats is you can detect a respiratory parasite in cat feces because they'll cough up a lungworm and swallow it. And so you might diagnose a respiratory disease based off of a fecal sample.
Oh,
That'd be a cool one to.
No, I would imagine. Yeah.
Yep. And then toxoplasma is one that a lot of people hear about because if you have cats, pregnant women are not allowed to change the litter because toxoplasma can be damaging to, if it was accidentally, obviously, if they got it on their hands and didn't wash them and got that particular parasite in their mouth, it's toxic to a human fetus.
oh well.
Damaging to a human fetus, I should
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Well,
That'd be a good one.
yeah. Well, Dr. Slattery, I think we'll close it out with you, and maybe if there's one last thing that you can kind of share about forensics and what you're excited about and how you feel about this, and we'll end it with that.
Yeah, I'm very excited about everything that it has a potential to do, in particular with cats and the litter boxes. I really think that the sky is the limit, but with the laser focus that you guys have right now in the cat space and seeing the reality that there are so many owned cats that are not coming into the vet. And quite honestly, it's just a reminder that, our job doesn't stop when the cat leaves the vet clinic. We need to be in a relationship with our pet owners, and the information that they can provide to us can potentially help us answer questions and make decisions that are paramount to the health and quality of health that cat experiences. And so I'm ecstatic to be involved. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys and learn more about forensics. And I'm anticipating the next meeting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
These vet bills are killing me. What? Have you tried Iris?
Stay ahead of costly vet bills with Furrensics Iris. It helps catch health conditions early, so your feline friend stays healthy, happy, and out of trouble.
So it is like a health check, right from the litter box?
Yes! That's Iris.
Furrensics Iris. See what your cat hides.